if a person had to make a bracha on more alone, he would say achilas more, but would he make a bracha adama since it's not hana? Since there's no
yes, he would
hana
make a bracha adama first.
I know,
Similar to when we say by matzah, we say amotzi lechem in haaretz, and
right.
then we say cher kedushan al achilas matzah. It's the same thing. If we wouldn't have made the adama,
would he make adama by more alone? If let's say we just have more without not lettuce you get. There's no, but more. There's no hana from it really. Not nourishment either. But achilas more.
Say that again.
So,
we have Yitzchak ben Achad Shmaitza, and who Rav Yitzchak ben Pinchas Tagarita. There are two Rav Yitzchaks. There's a Rav Yitzchak ben Achad who was the Rav Yitzchak when it came to halacha, and there was a Rav Yitzchak ben Pinchas. Who's there? Hi, Jake. There was a Rav Yitzchak ben Pinchas who was known for Agarita. The Simonech Shimuna Achai v'Reyai. Listen to me, my brothers. Regarding how that's a shmaitza, that was a simon that they knew. Rav Yitzchak ben Acha, the Achai, was the Rav of halacha. You know, onion is very cheap. It was like a saying, eat onion and sit in a nice place because it's easy. Don't eat geese and chicken. They're expensive and people enjoy these things and they're going to run after it and it's going to, bankrupt him. Don't spend so much money on food. Rather, spend a lot of money on your home. It's in the end, it's going to be more valuable because you eat something and that's it. It's consumed and it doesn't produce long-term value. That in Eretz Yisrael, they eat a fat tail. Toshi Bal Yasa. He ends up hiding in his attic because the creditors are chasing after him. The Achel Kakuli, but somebody who eats vegetables that are very inexpensive. Askila Demonstration, he sits on the palace of the city. Mishnah. Back to the dinim of the Seder. Mazgalo Kos Rishon. So they poured the first kos, which is the kos of Kiddush. First you make Kiddush, then you say Boy Pragefen after Kiddush. No, you say Boy Pragefen, then you say Kiddush. Among the various arguments between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding Su'udah, this is one of them. You make Kiddush first. Why? Why are you even drinking wine? Because the day is goyim for yayin to come. So make Kiddush first. That's goyim to the yayin. And the second reason, right? The day is started. Therefore, it makes sense to say the Kiddush before you drink the wine. Beis Hillel, no. You cannot say Kiddush without either wine or pas. If you have no yain or pas, you don't make Kiddush. So Kiddush comes because of the wine. Dover Acher, another reason for Beis Hillel. We have a principle, Toder v'she'eno toder, toder koiden. You have two things to do. And you're trying to decide what to do first. One of the principles of how to make that decision is the concept of todir. That which is said more frequently, or that which is done more frequently, you should do first. So birchas hayayin tadira, ubirchas hayomin tadira. You can drink wine every day. Kiddush comes once a year for Pesach or whatever. So therefore, Todir Shena Todir Kodim. That's why you make boy Priya Geffen first. The Hilchas are Kediver Beis Hillel. The halacha is like Beis Hillel. So the Gemara has two questions on this whole sugi. First of all, my Dover Acher. Why did Beis Hillel have to give me a second reason? He gave you a reason. He said, what do I need a Dover Acher for? Because maybe you'll say, because Beis Shammai had two, and I only have one, so here as well is two. The second one is Todim Shena Todim Kodim. Okay. Freit the Gemara, the halacha to Kedivrei Beis Hillel. Why do you have to tell me the halacha? I know the Pshita, the Hanafik Baskol, the famous Gemara, where Baskol came out, and Masechta Eruvin, and said the halacha is like Beis Hillel. So all of a sudden you have to tell me halacha is like Beis Hillel. I know halacha is like Beis Hillel. Ibor Yisem Akodim Baskol. Could be that this Toner Rabbanan is prior to the Baskol. So they have to vote. They have to say the halacha was Beis Hillel. Ibor Yisem Elachar Baskol. Rabbi Yeshua Yidom Rein Mashgichin Baskol. Right? If you remember, that's another Gemara in Bava Metzia, in Perek HaZahav, by Toner Achnoi, when Rabbi Lozer was giving all sorts of proofs that halacha was like him, and he said, let the walls collapse, and the walls were collapsing. So in the end, Rabbi Yeshua said, doesn't make a difference, because we're not mashgichin, or the Abaskal came out and said halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. So there as well, Rabbi Yeshua said, ein mashgichin bevaskol. We don't paskin by a baskol, because lo b'shamayim. So even after the baskol, you have to have hilchos Beis Hillel, because just because a baskol came out and said that halacha is like Beis Hillel, we don't necessarily, Rabbi Yeshua said, we don't follow it. Mishnah. Of course, the halacha is we say boyer priya gef, and then we say kiddush. That's by Shabbos, it's by all Yomim Tov. Mishnah. Have you looked of metabel the chazeres ad shemagila paperes apas? So the taich of this Mishnah is they brought in front of them some vegetables prior to the Suda, like our karpas. Now, let's say they didn't have potato, like let's say normally we use romaine lettuce from Morocco. And they brought in romaine lettuce rather than a potato. Like my minig is to have potato. Some people use celery or other green vegetables for karpas, but I think the Polish the Eastern European minig was to use potatoes because they had potatoes. But I know by the Sephardim, by other people, they use other things. They use like celery or other things for karpas. So, but they didn't have. So they brought him a piece of romaine lettuce. So metabel b'chazeres. So you dip it. You dip that thing in order for it to have good taste. And then ad shemegila paperes apas. Eventually, you're going to have moror that you're going to eat l'shem mitzvah. That's after you eat the matzah. But now you're metabel even the chazeres, even before, because you're going to be toivel that as well. The second time, the moror will also be toivel, because we'll see there's two tvilas. So this is the discussion that you're toivel the karpas as well. Then. Later on, they're going to bring you matzah, and the chazeres. That chazeres is the lettuce, the charoises, because we're going to dip into the charoises, and you have to bring two tafshilim, which we're going to see. That's like the egg and the zroa, right? Right now we don't know what that is, But in order for because of the covet of the chag, we bring two cooked things. The Gemara will tell us what that is, but eventually it'll come out that it's we put on the Seder plate, the egg and the zroa. We also put the chazeres and the charoises on the Seder plate as well. So all of this is sort of the describing how we do that. How the halacha will be built from this, we'll see. Mitzvah. Now this is going on the charoises. Excuse me. Abu Bishen charoises mitzvah. The Tanakama says you bring charoises, but charoises is not a mitzvah. But Rabbi Yisrael, no, it is a mitzvah. It is. We'll see what the machlokes says. And the mikdash ha'mavil fun of guf shel Pesach. The other thing was brought out at the beginning of the meal was the body of the korban Pesach. Not only that, they also brought out the meat. Remember, they shechted a korban chagiga called the chagiga yudalit. That there's two chagigos, chagiga yudalit and chagiga tezvav. There's a korban chagiga that was shechted on the 14th, which you used for your meat for your Seder night. And the korban Pesach was eaten as a dessert to that. So you needed meat from the chagiga. And then, so that the Rambam says that the night of the Seder, they brought you, that this Mishnah says all the things that they brought in front of the table. Not only was the guf shel Pesach, it's also the korban chagiga yudalit. Then remember, they also shechted a korban chagiga called the chagiga tezvav, which is shechted in the daytime of the first day of Yom Tov. You use that to eat for your meal. Very interesting. So on Pesach, you had a separate chagiga. But by Yom Tov, for example, Shavuos and Sukkot, what did you eat the night of Yom Tov? Because the chagiga tezvav has to be shechted on tezvav. So that's a shiloh that I have.
Could the chagiga be roasted?
The chagiga can be roasted, yes.
Yeah.
Chagiga is a shlami, and you can eat this. You could prepare the shlami any way you want it. Any chatas, when the Kohanim ate a chatas, we don't eat the chatas, but you could eat it if they wanted it raw, they wanted it boiled, they could eat it any way they want. They could eat with any condiment they want. The same thing with the shlami. You could eat. There was no restriction how to prepare it. The restriction was a korban pesach. That had to be roasted. Couldn't be eaten any other way. I'm just clearing that it's only because Yud Daled Nisan is like a yontif in its own right because of its special nature that they shechted the korban pesach on Yud Daled, and that the korban pesach had to be eaten ala soiva, that they had to have a chagiga Yud Daled that was shechted on the day before an erev yom. So on the night of Sukkot, the meat that they ate was not a korban meat. Right? Ain't simcha. That's why it says over there is l'rat that there's a havamina that there's no simcha the first night of Yom Tov. That's it goes to the 8th night. It's probably totally in that issue. I'm just clearing with you guys about the status of the meat that was eaten the night of Yom Tov. Shavuos, we could say they ate melachik. Yeah, but there are those that by Shavuos as well they eat basar. They first ate their melachik, then they wash their mata, then they have meat as well. Even bisman hazem, people eat meat because of ein simcha basar v'yayin. Okay, something to look into. Kuf Yudad Amid Beis. Amrish Lakish Zoysa Meres. Based on this halacha about the tray tibula that you have to dip it twice, Zoysa Meres mitzvah strichas kavan. There's a debate throughout Shas that when you perform a mitzvah, does it need kavan or not? So, kivan de lo be eden chiyuva the morahu de achalei. When they bring the romaine lettuce now by karpas, is not the zman of chiyuv of morahu. So you have to eat that after matzah. So but he eats it, but he makes a bracha b'boy pri'adama hu da'achur. The dilma lo yichavin l'mora. And maybe when he made that bracha, he didn't have in mind the chiyuv moror. So therefore, hilkach boy l'mahavlad l'shem moror. That's why later on, when you dip the moror, and the Charoi says, that's the reason why you have a double dipping, to make sure that you have kavana. Because if you held that it didn't need kavana, you don't need the second. You don't need this initial dipping. Because the itzak edaitach mitzvah boy kavana lamali trei tibuli. Otherwise, it made no sense to do these two dippings. Because you already dipped it once. So the only reason you dip it again is because maybe when you made the boy pri'adama, you didn't have kavana for moror. By the way, in the Seder night, we always remind ourselves that, oh, you know what? Now when you make the boy pri'adama, have in mind the moror. Right? We say that. People always mention, oh, have in mind the moror. So this is also an answer to Elazar's question. That l'chor, it needs its own bracha. That means if you ate more, or you would also need to make a boy pri'adama, no question about it. Then it says, your attempt now to prove that mitzvahs tzrichas kavana based on these two dibum is not correct. Dil maloyla mitzvahs ain't tzrichas kavana. Perhaps mitzvahs don't require kavana. Udika amrit trei tibuli lamali. So you ask me, well, then what's the point of this second dipping? Well, all night we're going to do all sorts of different things in order for the children to ask manishtana, right? And that's in fact one of the manishtanas is the trei tibuli, so that the children will stay up, and that way they'll ask questions, they'll be curious. You arise their intellect. You can, that's part of the magi. The chitem came and shar yerakos. So then, why dafka did the Mishnah talk about chazeres, that you brought me the same, the romaine lettuce, even by shar yerakos, if it was a potato or a celery, if it's based on heker for the tinoikos, it shouldn't make a difference. It's the same item that here you're asking the question about the bracha of boy pri'adam because you're eating the same thing later on. So the Gemara says no. And a chanami. There I would have said that if you had different vegetables now and a different vegetable, like you had a potato, and later on you can use romaine lettuce, but if you brought the romaine lettuce as the karpas, maybe lo boy trei tibul. Maybe you wouldn't need trei tibul. So you need the two tibulit for the heker. So let's say you bought your vegetables from an amoritz, and there was the produce that was sold by an amoritz has the status of demai, which is a suffix whether they gave trumas and maestros. So let's say the karpas was demai. We don't know if it was meister or not because you bought it from an amoritz. The din is yotza. You're still yotze. Achron below miskavein. Let's say you ate it without kavana. Also yotza. Achron lechatzoin. You ate only a half a zayis, not a full zayis. Yotza v'vachol yeshev ben achila chaveta yosef metechilas pras. As long as there isn't a 9-minute period, the amount that it takes you to half a loaf between the two eatings. So it says very clearly in this baraisa that if you ate it without kavana, you're yotze. So it's a kasha on Reish Lakish. The Gemara says Tanoihi. And this has to do with moror. The din of chatzizai is pam rishon. All this is below kavana is by moror. So the Gemara says it's machlokes tanoim. The time of Yosef Yomer Avol Pishet Tiva b'chazeres. even though he dipped the chazeres. Mitzvah lavi lefanam chazeres v'charoises shnei tafshil. You still have to bring later on, after the matzah, chazeres and charoises and shnei tafshil. Because the Rashbam says he wasn't mekskaving for the achilas morer. So Mor says, Mimai, there's no proof from that. Dilm ksav Rabbi Yossi mitzvah saying sichos kavon. V'hai debin and trei tibuli keichet devei kerla tinokets. And for the Gemara came my mitzvah. Now, since it says mitzvah, it means according to Rabbi Yossi, you need kavana for it. Period. Now, what's this? Why do you have to bring two tafshir? My shnei taf. What are these two tafshir? Aravuna silk of aruza, beets and rice. Obviously, they were svardim, because this was before the Ramah in 1600s brings that Ashkenazim have refrained from eating kitnias and rice. So it's a late minhag. So certainly Ravuna, they ate rice, right? Silk of aruza with the two cooked dishes. Rav Avmadir has silk of aruza. Rav would look for beets and rice. Oil v'nafit with Ravuna, because that's what Ravuna said to use. Based on this halacha, we see that we're not worried about Rav Yechon. Oir is min dogon. According to Rav Yechon ben Nuri, oir is like a grain, and therefore chayav l'chimutz kares. If the grain got leavened, it'd be chayav kares. We made matzah out of rice. You'd be yotzei matzah. We are not chayish for Rabbi Yechon. Chizkiah says you could bring fish and an egg as this shnei tafshil. Rabbi Yezom atzar shnei minei basar. You need two kinds of flesh. Echad zeich lePesach, ve'echad zeich leChagiga. One is because of the two korbans we used to eat, the Pesach and the Chagiga. Rabbi Yirama afilu garmo v'shuma. Even a piece of meat with its sauce, with its gravy, is considered shnei tafshil. Of course, we are noyeg to bring a piece of meat. We take a zroa and we roast it, and a beitzah. We roast that too. And therefore, there's also many good people eat eggs. We don't eat the zroa because it's too much looking like you're eating the korban pesach. But the eggs we do eat. We usually eat that right after the koirech, before we eat the suda, where they bring eggs with salt water. Pshita. Heicha de ikashar yerakos. The varch ashar yerakos ber pradam. V'achol. V'hadam varch alachilas mora. V'achol. Heicha de lekel chasamai. Fine. That's if you have shar yerakos. You have a potato. You make a ber pradam. Later on, you bring the chasa, the lettuce. You make alachilas mora. What if you only had lettuce? Which is like how we do it. We're not really noyeg to use the same lettuce as the karpas, but you could, and you make the boy pradam on that and eat it, and in the end, after the matzah, you do the same thing. Okay, we're gonna ask a kasha on that as well. Okay, so again, tomorrow we will learn